Hello, hello. My name is Jordan, and I'm your host. And today we are joined by a lovely, lovely guest, Canice from Queer Youth Rises. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, you can.
Hi everyone. My name's Canice. I'm from BC, Canada. Not 15. I'm 17. And I'm in grade 12.
Okay, hold on. you really threw it back like 2 million years ago.
Yeah.
15 is totally different from 17, but okay.
It's because the last time I've done like a full introduction was when I was 15, so I just it's in my head.
Okay, I get that. So today we're going to be talking about white LGBTQ issues versus minority LGBTQ issues, and if I mess up, I'm just gonna say queer instead because that is a mouthful sometimes. We're also going to be talking about lack of inclusive education, and lastly we will be talking about the lack of representation within media in regards to minority LGBTQ plus queerness. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to start with our Rose Thorn Bud. But for newer viewers, if you don't know about a Rose Thorn Bud, a rose is a highlight, success, small win, or something positive that happened today or within the last week. A thorn is a challenge you experienced or something you could use more support with. And lastly, a bud are some new ideas that have blossomed or something you're looking forward to knowing more about or experiencing. So I always like to hand it off to the guest before we actually get started. So Canice, can you tell us about your Rose Thorn Bud?
Of course. So I think my rose was I finished all of my finals yesterday for AP Calculus.
Nice.
That was exciting. A thorn is I feel like I've become less involved in my volunteering, so I think I need to, now that I have more time after my finals, I can start to involve myself in volunteering again.
Nice.
And my bud, I'm very excited to go shopping with my friends this weekend.
Love that. You gotta make time for yourself and your friends. Love that.
Yes.
Awesome. So my rose would probably be I'm going to start with my thorn because then it'll explain my rose. So my thorn is that I've been traveling a lot, but that's also my bud because I know I love traveling. Like, it's amazing. Although, like, hours and hours and hours in your car on a road trip is just so exhausting, and I just want somewhere to sleep, and now I'm here and I have somewhere to sleep in my bed properly. So that's definitely something that I'm happy about. As far as a bud goes, since I have a place to sleep now, I can finally get more involved in Forever Blooming and more involved in creating new projects since I have somewhere stable to actually, do all my meetings and everything like that. So I'm excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah. So with that being said, we'll actually get into the podcast episode. So let's talk about white queer issues versus minority queer issues. We do want to say that, of course, as a community, we are going to be discriminated against, but it's definitely not equal, since minority issues are definitely so very separate from white issues, because it is a fact that we get discriminated more based on our minorityness, that's not a word, but our minority identity and our LGBTQ identity. So it's kind of like double the punch. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, that's totally true. Like, I know for me personally, I've had a little bit of fear since COVID for the Asian hate crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of like more aware of that. Whenever I go out into public, I'm always aware of like whoever is around me, whoever is like staring, I guess. I don't know like the right term, but I'm just like in general more aware of what's around me. And like, plus being LGBTQ, I don't openly show it, I don't think. But I do have some like outfits. Sometimes I look more queer-ish if that makes sense. Like, it really depends on what I'm wearing, and like everyone has like the subconscious stereotypes in their head too. So some outfits do make me look more queer than not. And I think like when I'm wearing those outfits and I'm out in public, especially if I'm out by myself, I'm definitely a lot more aware. Yeah.
I definitely feel that. I think when you are aware of your surroundings and like overly aware, you're like thinking of, am I going to get discriminated because I'm wearing this? Am I going to be discriminated because I look like this? And again, it's double the punch because well, for me, I'm black and I'm also LGBTQ. Of course, I don't present, well, I'm going to say I look a little gay sometimes. I look a little gay sometimes. Especially for those who are overly, I wouldn't say overly as if it's a bad thing, but represent like wearing pins, pride pins and things like that, wearing things that outwardly show their identity. It's definitely more of a fear for them. I don't personally wear pride pins or anything like that, but knowing that the society that we live in, you're going to be pointed out for either your race or your identity, and it's a very stressful thing to go through. Just thinking about the stress from stigma and discrimination can both just lead to a lot of, again, stress, and thinking about more microaggressions, especially microaggressions, are so prevalent within our society. I personally feel like I have been discriminated against in school for my identity and my race through microaggressions. Have you ever had that experience?
I don't think much of my race, since the area I live in is predominantly Asian. So like most of our school is Asian as well, so there's not much discrimination for race. But I have felt and seen microaggressions that were directed towards me. Like for example, one time I was wearing a hat with a rainbow on it. It wasn't even like a rainbow flag, it's just a regular rainbow. And then I've heard people point and say, look at her hat, and then like make knowing looks to their friends and stuff. So that's like really kind of the only things I can remember, at least right now. Yeah. But yeah, it does hurt when they do that.
Absolutely. And we kind of sort of devalue the amount that microaggressions and overt racist actions can affect you. We all know the overt racist like slurs and things like that, and of course people recognize that in the media, but we also don't recognize how much microaggressions can hurt you and make you feel isolated, make you feel like you are ostracized. And there's a huge problem with that, because I definitely have, like within my own family, have experienced microaggressions for my identity, just not directly towards me, but thinking about like the comments that they say about gay people and the comments that they say about other queer individuals is just, it's so irritating. But yeah, it's definitely also feeling, makes me feel isolated, makes me feel like I'm a freak in certain situations. We also want to talk about the general unacceptance of queer people in minority communities. As I said, I have seen a lot of, and I've heard a lot of talk about LGBTQ individuals and how it's a like awkward and stigmatized subject to talk about, and as my family talks about it, just looking down on the queer individuals in general. And it's definitely a more issue in the minority community. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, especially the thing about family. My family is, well, a little bit conservative, but not entirely. And I do hear comments from, especially my mom, since I'm closer to her. Whenever I wear, like, the clothes that I want to wear and, like, how I want to express myself, she's always like, oh, you're dressing like a boy, everyone's going to think you're a boy, or they're gonna think you're lesbian, and you can tell by her undertones that she means it in a negative way. And that's like especially hurtful, especially coming from my mom, like herself. Yeah. Like, for example, like if I want to wear a suit to prom, she's gonna be like, oh, now everyone's definitely gonna think you're lesbian. And I don't know, it just hurts me a lot, you know?
For sure. Especially when it's literally just clothing. Like, at the end of the day, it's just clothing. Like,
exactly.
You should wear what you want to wear at the end of the day. Don't worry about what you perceived. And if anything, why is it bad to be perceived as a lesbian? Why is it bad to be perceived as gay or masculine or anything like that? But that also leads back to the conversation of just, like, trying to appear domestic or feminine if you're born a woman. But you know, that's a conversation for another time. So we do want to mention also that white LGBTQ individuals are definitely more accepted in the general public, just because there is that added layer of, well, for minority queer individuals, there's that added layer of discrimination and stigma, as well as just like trying to coexist in both of your identities. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, in this one study that I seen, it's like LGBTQ people of color are like 51% more likely to face discrimination, and it's like really upsetting, because the community is supposed to be a place where like you can feel supported and accepted no matter what. But, like, if you're being discriminated on one part of your identity but only being accepted for another part, it's like really hurtful and upsetting.
Right, exactly. And then we also have that added layer of some racist LGBTQ white individuals, and it's like, I never understood the part of where you discriminate against others when you are oppressed in general in society. Like, how can you be racist in LGBTQ? How can you be black or a minority and oppressing queer individuals? Like, it doesn't make sense in my mind.
Yeah, like, especially if you understand the oppression and you faced it yourself. Like, why would you put that onto someone else? Like,
Exactly. And then there's, of course, the I don't see color people, who also are, like, part of the problem as well, because of course you see color, we all see color, and sometimes you have a lot of bias depending on the color that you see or the race that you perceive somebody as. And I was gonna say it's okay to have bias, but yeah. I think it's okay to have bias to the extent of which you don't allow it to create ignorance, and you try to try to perceive your bias and be aware of your bias and try to correct that bias. So if you automatically have a racist thought, it's like you understand where that racist thought is coming from, and then you try to backtrack and be like, wait, that's not okay. And because racism and homophobia and transphobia is a part of some people's family lives, and it's a part of how they grow up. So if you automatically have that bias because of the way you grew up, it's still important for you to do your due diligence in trying to correct that bias and correct that prejudice that you have instilled in you. And that's, I was gonna say it's a lot of work, but it's not. Just just be accepting of a lot of people. That's it.
and like in the same study from before, it says that like 3 in 5, so like 61%, have experienced discrimination from other LGBTQ people. And like the 61%, they've experienced the discrimination of race, like racism, basically, from other LGBTQ people. It's like 61%. That's a big number.
Huge number. And I still don't understand the problem. But that's again going back to that bias talk about how you're raised and how you are supposed to do your due diligence and trying to face that bias and trying to overcome that bias. So, that being said, we do want to say that there's also a sort of, I don't remember if it's called code switching, but there's also that sort of phenomenon where you have to exist in spaces where you are trying to exist like in separate identities. Like, for example, if you know that you are in an unaccepting space, as far as like a homophobic space, then and you're black, then you have to appear black more than LGBTQ because you're trying to keep yourself safe, of course. And if you're appearing in an LGBTQ space that is more inclined to be, I guess, more queer-centric and even have racist undertones, then you have to appear more LGBTQ than black. And it's just a constant struggle of trying to separate your identities when you can't really do that. You have to exist in your own identity as both queer and both a minority. And it can be hard to do, but that is who you are, and that is how you exist. And it takes a lot to be proud of both identities and themselves, but it takes time and effort.
Exactly, yeah. I totally relate too, because for my mom and a lot of my mom's friends, they're all like Chinese, they're all Asian, and I feel like I'm trying to accept more the Asian part of myself because I'm already pretty proud of the queerness in me, even though that took a lot of work and a lot of it was by myself, but I'm still trying to accept the Asian part of me. So I feel like when I'm around my mom and her friends, I feel like I have to push down my queerness a lot, especially since I'm closeted, but like I feel like even if I wasn't, then I wouldn't be able to express my queerness around my mom and her friends because of like how they want me to express my Asian culture more.
Right. And that's exactly the sort of issue that happens when you are separating your identity, because even though you are in a space where you have to protect yourself, it's like you again have to, I guess you also get into a space where you're like, okay, one part of me is not bad, or one part of me is worse than the other, and so I have to present it as the part of me that isn't that bad. And you get into the cycle of self-hatred and things like that, and to the point of which you can even feel bad about both identities or feel bad about one identity and never fully evolve to the point of like accepting yourself as one individual with two identities or maybe more identities. So, yeah. It's an unfortunate phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, as far as white issues versus black issues or minority issues, as far as like incorporating queerness in there is a higher risk for minority queer individuals for mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, substance use disorders, and suicide, which is so unfortunate, because when you think about the issues that are being faced, then that's kind of where you lead to that path of depression, anxiety, and it's really just to a point of which we have to create a better, more accepting world, which is like way easier said than done. But it's definitely an issue that needs to be fixed. Do you have anything to say before we move on?
No, I completely agree, yeah.
For sure. Okay. So then we're going to move on to the lack of education, which we can definitely touch on the Don't Say Gay bill that we all are frustrated by. But let's talk about how LGBTQ education isn't mandatory in most places. What experience was that for you in your high school times or your middle school times or even elementary?
Well, I was not really taught about the LGBTQ plus community. I actually can't remember when I was taught about it. Like, I don't remember a time where a teacher mentioned it in a lesson. So, it's like, I don't think I've heard too much about it. Or I just have, like, a really bad memory, I don't know. Yeah. I've never been taught about it in class, I don't think. Yeah.
I definitely can speak to the same experience. I feel like when it comes to any sort of minority issues, whether that's queerness, whether that's like blackness, Asianness, it's not a word, but we're working with it. When it comes to minority issues, those aren't taught in class at all. I never was taught about the LGBTQ community. In fact, I heard more stigmatizing language towards the LGBTQ community than actual like education about LGBTQ issues. And I keep remembering that time my teacher in class was just like, "Oh, trans," because we were learning about like transformational angles or something like that. I don't remember what it's called because I don't do math, but yeah, there was something with trans in it, and he was like, "Oh, trans, oh yeah, we're not talking about that," and I was like, okay, like, why did you throw that in there?
Yeah, that was such an unnecessary comment to make.
Like, literally. And you know, as a trans individual myself, I was just sitting there and I was like, felt so ostracized and felt so isolated to the point at which I just wanted to, like, first of all, I wanted to announce myself, like, hello. But then, second of all, I was like, I really felt the need to just run out of the classroom and tell somebody or just go somewhere to where I could feel more accepted. And that's the problem with the lack of LGBTQ education, because you have scenarios like that where teachers say a inappropriate thing, or students say an inappropriate thing, or just general misunderstanding about LGBTQ issues to the point where it's just sort of roundabout of ignorance and bias and prejudice and homophobia, transphobia, every type of phobia. And that's where it's kind of just like is the point of the issue, where, you know, education sort of leads to acceptance and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, now that you mentioned that, like, your teacher talking about the angles or whatever, I remember in chemistry, my teacher was talking, like, something about molecules and how we write their names or whatever in chemistry, and we have to write either cis or trans in the name. And then I think someone in the classroom said a comment about it, and they're like, "Oh, is that like something about like the LGBTQ plus community?" I don't remember, it was a while ago. But the teacher just like kind of brushed over it and moved on. Like, they didn't acknowledge the comment, which I don't think the person making the comment was like they meant to be hurtful, but like, the fact that the teacher just brushed over it like it was nothing. That
is the chance where you actually educate others about what cis and trans is. Like, it has nothing to do with the lesson, but if somebody asks a question, you're supposed to answer it. And that's where you can, like, educate others again. And I do want to point out the statistic that fewer than 5% of LGBTQ students had health classes that included positive representation of LGBTQ-related topics. And fewer than 5%, y'all. 5%. We gotta do better. Like,
definitely.
It's as simple as answering a student's questions about what cis and trans is. And even if that teacher was, like, homophobic or transphobic or something phobic, like, it's still somebody else's duty to answer that question and really, like, expand on it so that everybody is educated about it. Yeah,
exactly. And I think the only time in school that I've like learned or I've like heard about the community itself is like in our Rainbow Club. And that's about it. Like this doesn't include times where like I've talked about it first to a teacher or something. But like the Rainbow Club, we call it the Activism and Awareness Club, but it mostly focuses on like LGBTQ plus issues. But like that was the only time I've heard about it. But that sponsor teacher is like one of the best teachers in the school, I think. Like one time we had a fundraiser and we were selling handmade bracelets. We were going to donate to a local LGBTQ plus organization. And on one of our posters in the school, it said like F word off and then the F slur. And like when we reported it to the teacher was immediately supportive, and she like immediately like put up a plan for us to report other homophobic or transphobic comments, and she was going to take all of them to the admin. Like she immediately supported us, and I think that's what's really important, like as a teacher, is just support your students, like no matter what.
See, I think it's especially when it comes to LGBTQ students, there's so many issues that the queer community faces, and it's like if you take the time to realize that your student is in need of your help, whether that is facing homophobia or transphobia or just personal issues with gender identity or struggles with sexuality or anything like that, it comes to the point of like surpassing your personal beliefs and just helping out another individual in need. It's as simple as that. Like literally. Exactly. But we do want to touch on the Don't Say Gay bill. We do want to touch on that, I guess. So, if you don't know what the Don't Say Gay bill is, it's basically a bill in Florida that forbids instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity through grades K through 3rd grade, and the law will have parents be able to sue districts over violations. Sue just because you're talking about like current world issues. Like every child needs to know about world issues, whether they be 5 or 10 or 17, whatever. Like, what is your opinion on the Don't Say Gay bill?
Awful, terrible. I dislike it greatly. Like, personally, I think if I had the LGBTQ plus education in school, especially elementary school, then I think I would have maybe accepted myself. I would have figured myself out a lot earlier. Like as a personal thing, an experience. In elementary school, everyone was like, oh, who do you have a crush on? Who do you have a crush on? I never had a crush until grade 9. So in elementary school, I would always have to make up, like, I'd choose a person to have a crush on. So it was kind of like I was fitting in. And I never understood why I didn't have a crush. So I feel like if I had this queer education, maybe I would have understood better. I would have accepted myself earlier, and like I wouldn't feel so left out, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And really, I think if you started young, there's going to be so many more queer kids that understand themselves and trying to figure themselves out, like you said, at a younger age, to the point of which you don't have to go through that period of like, what am I? What is happening? Like, should I feel ashamed for my identity? Should I feel ashamed about my sexuality? And if I do feel ashamed, how am I going to hide it and go through that period of just, like, complete confusion and shame and everything like that, just because it wasn't talked about in schools or just because it wasn't talked about at home? I definitely went through that period, and it's not fun. It's not fun, to say the least. Yeah, so if we do start young, we can spot out the LGBTQ kids, and we can even help support them and assist them more as they grow older. And it's not like I I know this bill is probably because it's based on like the gay is gonna affect your kids or something like that. And it's like, I don't know. It's I never understood it.
I actually researched that myth one time. Like, you're gonna turn the kids gay or something. And it's like, actually, it's like the part of your brain that controls your emotional connectedness. Is that a word? I don't know. Yeah, like the emotion, I don't know, like the emotional attachment you have with other people, that part of the brain is developed in the womb. So like, you can't turn gay, you know, like that part of the brain, it won't change. Like who you're attracted to, it won't change. So you can't turn gay, you're just born gay. So like this bill, I don't know, it's like we can't turn the kids gay, so it's like just better to educate them instead of like making them feel excluded and like secluding them, you know?
Exactly. And even if a straight kid has a questioning phase of like, am I gay? It's like, it's not that bad, because at the end of the day, they're still going to be straight. At the end of the day, they're going to figure themselves out, and it's not bad to have a phase. It's not bad to think that you're something else that you're not. That's just a part of childhood and growing up. It's really not that bad. I don't know why people think it is. Like, why is it bad to think you're gay?
Exactly. And I think, like, this one influencer, Matt XIV on Instagram.
I love him.
Yeah, he's great. He makes tons of educational posts on the LGBTQ plus community. And then I think one time in his stories, he put a question. He's like, at what age did you know you were LGBTQ plus? And then he reposted a bunch of his answers, and a lot of them were like 5 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. Like 5 and 7. 7 is grade 2, I believe. I think so. So like up until 8 years old, kids won't know what the LGBTQ plus community is unless they're taught by people outside of school. And I think like 8, you can definitely know about the community. Like that's like you can definitely start questioning your sexuality at 8, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So that being said, all of this tie it up in a whole bow, if we do educate our kids, if we do educate people in general, it ultimately leads to the acceptance of LGBTQ individuals. And that can be like even like minority education. Like, we need more education about minorities, and if there is more education about Black issues, Asian issues, anything like that, then there is automatically going to be some form of acceptance, some form of understanding, and that is actually the basis of QIR. So, actually, talk about QIR for a second. Like, let's give you the stage.
So, QIR, Youth Rises, was founded in March 2021. And basically, our mission is to give out free online education on the LGBTQ plus community. But in the future, we hope that it won't just be online, and maybe we can do some in-person things. But yeah, and so like we really hope to be a place where people can come and like find reliable education. They can get advice. They can get resources from us that like about the LGBTQ plus community. And the reason why this whole organization started was because in 2021, I found a bunch of misinformed or like uneducated comments under an Instagram post about how a transgender runner was ineligible to compete in the Olympic trials. And like all of the comments under that post, like literally every single comment I read was like, yes, I agree, good job, like clapping emoji. Like they were all agreeing with the headline. And I was like, I don't think they understand the process of like of a trans athlete, because like, yeah, I think there's like a whole bunch of tests, there's like a bunch of processes that you have to go through to become like, especially like for Olympic level, I would assume, or like I would hope they would have a bunch of tests, like, because all the comments were like, oh yeah, if, like, being transgender, you have a bunch of like biological advantages, like the hormones and stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, you take hormones for the other,
like literally.
Yeah. So that's basically how QIR started, and like I just wanted to take action, take initiative, and like inform a bunch of people. So that's what we're doing. We're putting out free LGBTQ plus education. You can find our Instagram at Queer Youth Rises. That's our platform. And yeah, so the education leads to acceptance thing is basically, my thought process was, if I can educate these people on their biases, the internal stereotypes they might be thinking about, and like all these myths and stuff, then maybe I can help them accept queer people. Because if they think like, oh, teaching my children about gay people will turn them gay, and then I give them the biological information, how that part of the brain develops in the womb, maybe they'll be like, oh, so my child won't turn gay, then I will be able to teach the children about gay people. Like, that was kind of my thought process behind the organization. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, check them out for sure. Awesome. So we are going to touch on our last topic. Unfortunately, it's been such a great episode, but this is the last topic. So we're going to be talking about the obvious lack of representation of minority individuals, or minority queer individuals, in the media. So as you can tell, within every single show you watch, within like that has queer individuals, they're white. That's it. that's it. They're white. Yeah. And we also want to touch on the fact that the algorithm in social media also favors white queer individuals. Like, most of the actual queer individuals that I follow are white. Especially when it comes to the trans community, especially when it comes to the non-binary community, there's such a high representation of like white, skinny AFAB individuals. And if you don't know what AFAB means, it's assigned female at birth. But yeah, do you follow any like queer people, and are they white?
Yes and yes. So, yeah, like all the queer people on my For You page especially is like, they're most, if not all, white. And I think there's only like 2 or 3 people who come up that aren't white. I forgot their names. Oh my gosh. There's one that is, I don't know his name. Shoot. Like, his content is basically being like the fun gay uncle. That
Nice.
creator. There's Summer, who is a trans Asian individual, and there's one more. Oh my gosh, I just forgot it. Oh my gosh.
You got
If I
this.
remember, I'll say it. But
Okay.
yeah, but everyone else on my For You page, they're all white, and I don't know. Like, I find that when you join at first, the algorithm shows you predominantly white people. So when you like stuff, it shows you more white people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like just from the start, maybe they should have like more of a mix,
Mm-hmm.
like white people of color, you know. Because if you like white content, or like white creators' content, then they'll show up more, of course. So
Right. And we also got to think about like the actual guidelines and rules that are in place. If there are algorithms that take race into account, what is going to happen when it comes to like equality and following the guidelines? Like, I've seen so many, like on TikTok specifically, I've seen so many like black creators, both queer and non-queer, that have been blocked by saying like important issues, like bringing attention to queer issues and just getting blocked from the algorithm, or like pushed, like their post has been pushed down or even taken off the platform. And there's just so much questioning behind that. How do you take race into account when you are building your guidelines for the app? How do you make sure that more white people are being on the timeline? Like, how do you build an algorithm like that, and how do we like overcome the barriers of that algorithm is the real question.
Exactly, yeah.
For sure. And not to say, like, shout out to all my white queer individuals, you're awesome, but I really want to see more minority individuals on the algorithm, because please, I just want to see someone like me. That's all. That's all.
Yeah.
Even on Instagram, I did talk about TikTok, but even on Instagram, when it's like suggesting you feeds to like and follow, I said subscribe of it as if I'm talking about YouTube, but okay. I mean, YouTube, there's a problem on YouTube too, don't get me wrong. Like, all of these platforms, there's an issue of prioritizing white individuals, and you gotta really question how, again, that breakdown really is.
Yeah. And, like, talking about the priority of, like, the white, skinny AFAB people, like, especially a lot of, like, social media influencers who are trans that I see on my Explore or my For You or whatever, they're, like, they're either young, so, like, less than 30, or they're white. Like, I never see any young and POC creators who are also trans, you know?
Yeah. And I don't see a lot of old individuals either. Like, I the only old trans person I know is Caitlyn Jenner, and we all know about Caitlyn Jenner. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, what is there, like, is it like after you reach the age of 30 you're like no longer irrelevant or something? like
Yeah.
You're no longer relevant at all. But I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
Oh, it's okay, you can go ahead.
I was gonna say, especially during my in progress transition, seeing just white skinny AFAB individuals, it's like I never get to see me, and I never get to see me represented in social media. And the fact that I don't have anybody to look up to, I don't have anybody to relate to in regards to my experiences, and it's such an unfortunate experience, because I want to see somebody that I can relate to, and I want to see somebody that I could potentially reach out to and be like, hey, how was your issues with da-da-da-da, and just overall have that sort of community. But you don't see that on Instagram. And of course you can reach out to, as a minority, you can reach out to a white individual, but it's never going to be the same. It's just not. And there needs to be more communities like that, for sure.
Exactly. And, like, all of the, either, like, the relationships or, like, even individuals that I can think about right now off the top of my head are, like, fictional. Like, they're TV show characters or they're movie characters. Like, the one that pops up in my head is the one football coach from Glee. Like,
I've never watched Glee. Oh my god.
I only watched, like, part of the first season. It's okay. But, yeah. Like, the coach was, I think, they were white and they were AFAB, but they were not skinny. So they don't fit all of the requirements, but they are still white and AFAB. So, yeah. I can't think of any, like, especially Black or Asian people in the media who are trans, you know. Yeah.
I have been on the hunt to find, like, really good books that actually have minority individuals So the one that I can name is Cemetery Boys. So if you're a book nerd, you love
I love Cemetery Boys.
It's so good. It's so good. But check out Cemetery Boys if you are a book nerd like us.
Yeah.
Because it's so amazing. But it's crazy how I can only name one book. Like that's literally it. Well, actually, I can name two, but the second book was trash, so we're not gonna talk about that. So, but if you ever want to read it, it's Felix Ever After. So, yeah. But, yeah. So, that being said, we do need more representation in literature and shows, especially in shows, because a lot of people consume shows. In magazines, media. Like when we first, I believe like last year was the first time that they featured like a black trans woman on the sports magazine or something, like for the first time. I was like, yes, but why isn't this happening more frequently?
Yeah, like surely that person can't be the only black trans athlete.
Yeah,
like,
literally.
Yeah.
And even on magazines, there's so many white people on magazines. Like, I'm sorry, but please get your act together.
Yeah, exactly.
But lastly, we do want to touch on white gay relationships portrayed more than minority relationships. I think, okay, this is going to be controversial. But I really want to see more minority relationships, because the only time that I see LGBTQ relationships is either a white gay relationship or a interracial relationship. And as much as I love interracial relationships, it's like, why am I still not seeing minority relationships? Like, I have never seen an Asian lesbian couple. I've never seen a black lesbian couple. I've never seen, well, I have seen a black gay couple, but
oh yeah, that one family on TikTok.
That one family on TikTok.
Yeah, I don't know what the username is. I can't think of it right now.
That one family. Yeah, but it's crazy. It's just crazy out here, y'all. Like, as much as I love seeing interracial relationships, there's also just this like role of like white people being added to be like more accepting. It can't be a black relationship entirely, because there has to be a white in order to make it more accepting to the viewer. And they don't want to catch a case, I guess.
Yeah. Like, right now, the ones that I can think of, the Netflix movie, The Half of Us. Like, there's one Asian person and one white person.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I haven't watched Moonlight, but I do know
Moonlight,
that there's like,
yeah. Moonlight was really good, actually.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, so
you should.
Gotta watch it soon though.
You should, for sure. Is there any other media that you can think of?
I think on Glee, there's a lesbian couple. I don't quite remember their names, but I think, yeah, at least one of them is white. In that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. Like, again, I love interracial relationships, but I really want to see more just minority, like, loving. That's all. That's all. At the end of the day, that's all I want to see. Yeah. Do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything that I can think of. Yeah.
Well, with that being said, we're going to close out this episode. So Forever Blooming does have a website. Our website is foreverbloompod.org. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all at foreverblooming.org, plus Twitter at foreverbloom.org. And plug your social media again for the people who didn't catch it.
Our website is queeryouthrises.com. We have our social media is all Queer Youth Rises. We are on LinkedIn. We are on Instagram. We are not that active on Facebook, but I will try to get that back active again.
Well, check them out because they're amazing. Absolutely love Queer Youth Rises. We're definitely gonna be partnering so much more in the future, so look out for that as well. The research for this episode is on our website in our podcast section, our podcast guest form. If you want to be like Canice here, you can find it also in our podcast section, and you can also find our audience spotlight form where you can ask for advice to be featured in our podcast episodes. And management at foreverbloom.pod is our at foreverbloom.pod.org is our email. Let us know your thoughts, questions, and how we can improve the podcast, because we absolutely love hearing from you. And be sure to check out fborg.card.co, and that is card with 2 R's, for all of our easy accessible links. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate us on Spotify, and share with your friends if you enjoyed this episode. And have a great day, afternoon, or night whenever you're listening to this. Thanks for tuning in.